Hey everyone and welcome to Grünstadt, the only city that gives me an existential crisis every single time I load it up. In today's episode, the municipality has once again decided to feed its addiction to infrastructure rather than invest in needed residential or commercial developments, or even consider recovering the industrial sector. Every single tenant in Fawn Yards has just gone up, left, and destroyed any evidence of them ever even existing. But who cares about stimulating and strengthening the economy by means of imports and exports of goods, cargo, and commodities? Let's build some expressways. Don't worry, I'll cover the new roads first, and then I have some great builds to show off. Previously, the city had taken the time to replace the vanilla freeways with some shiny new roads from Ronix, but like many things in the city, including my sanity, they deteriorated over time. Take the water spike of intimidation as an example. And it wasn't just that. I got plenty of world holes at intersection nodes. Connecting to vanilla roads needed a ton of ploppable asphalt and decals, and they weren't efficient. Ramps had to be manually detailed, and on many segments, I had to take the time to manually add lights. With CSUR, or the City Skylines Urban Road Project, this isn't really a problem anymore. I was wary of using its predecessor, CSUE, when I first replaced the freeways because of how big and seemingly complex the entire collection was, but with CSUR, that's not really a problem anymore. So, Grünstadt essentially has two main freeways. There's the Greensway, which is a very epic, funny, clever pun on Ottawa's Queensway, which goes from east to west, as well as the 431, which runs up north to the refinery. I replaced both of these alongside their interchanges and added a few in the process. It was actually really easy building the interchanges with CSUR. The entire process is really streamlined and it saved me a lot of time. Instead of scrolling through and finding the segment I need, I just punch it into the selector and that lets me do everything from there. It took me maybe 15 minutes to get used to. The Greensway is for the most part 2 lanes in each direction until just after the Cloverleaf, where there's also a dedicated transitway in the median. This is really just to speed up BRT service to GSX and to give emergency vehicles a quicker route. The interchanges themselves haven't really changed too much. All I did with the Western Trumpet is remake it in CSUR, and it still hooks up to the same roundabout. Even the partial Cloverleaf just got a little bit larger to be a slightly more realistic size. If you don't remember, I went with the partial because A, I don't really like the look of the full Cloverleaf, and B, I don't really like the look of the full Cloverleaf. That's it. It just brings too much attention to it, and I replaced those 2 ramps with underground U-turn ramps on either side. I think the 431 is a little more interesting. There's the interchange serving Woodside, which I managed to make a little more compact than the one before it. I do admit though, I really did like the look of the previous one. It just looked really cool with all of the ramps going everywhere. It was like all complex, but this one's a little more organized. I eliminated the ramp that led to the city core. I thought I'd let the Trumpet take care of that because I didn't want a huge volume of traffic clogging up all of the roads here. The only other notable one is the secondary interchange serving downtown. It's pretty different from the one it replaced, but it works. Other than that, there are a couple more interchanges. There's a Trumpet up north servicing Fawn Yards and a Y-type for the nuclear power plant, which I'll get to in a little bit. There's also a set of ramps for Blightville. I moved the connection a little bit more west and I had some fun making a cute little intersection. I also did this interesting bridge west of the city where I had the tracks meet up with the expressway. It's a really small and generally insignificant little build, but I had so much fun with it, and quirky things like that are always so fun to make. Now I can almost hear everyone screaming at the screen to take a look at the big airport spaghetti pile, but as always, I'm gonna have to disappoint y'all because I just left it. The connections rely very heavily on the arrival and departure level roads, but CSUR doesn't have roads like that. They don't have proper ones that have elevated bus stops and that can connect easily to the expressway. It's okay though. I try not to look at GSX all too much because I die a little bit inside every time I do. So I mean, all in all, CSUR is great, especially on the workflow. Some of the other big features for me were the smooth median transitions and the sound barriers that you can toggle with the sidewalk bike ban policy. You can also toggle the median back in at an intersection if you turn the traffic lights off, which is a pretty big plus and it saves you throwing some props in instead. It's not perfect though. I had and have a number of problems with it. For example, smooth median transitions are completely impossible if you're subbed to the remove unconnected tracks mod. Connecting to tram roads, if the CSUR road doesn't have bike lanes, spawns in some ghost tracks. There's weird node interactions that cause bike lane artifacts on asymmetrical CSUR roads that don't have bike lanes. And the big one is traffic actually stopping on some nodes. I thought this was a TMPE issue, and it might still be related, because I think it's Traffic Manager that disables the vanilla junction rules, but it's mostly happening on roads from the mod. I think once all of that is ironed out, it'll be an even better tool than it is now. Those are all just minor things, but already the time it saves and the ease of use is way better than a lot of the options out there. Some of you might have already noticed that I actually signed everything along the freeway. I used expensive sign packs for that with procedural objects. It was just something to add to make the expressways less boring and solidify some locations in the city because, yeah, we had all the districts labeled, but we didn't actually have anything in the city really that said what was where if you were in first-person camera, for example. I got really acquainted with the procedural objects text editor in the process, and it's the one thing I want to bring up in relation to the signs. I hate it. The window is tiny, I can't resize it, and in a city that runs at an FPS as low as 5 in some places, it's very slow. What I want is the ability to export the texture, open it up in Photoshop where I can set up a ton of templates and just churn them out and import them back in. There are already a couple of assets you can choose a texture for, but I really don't know. I'm not a modder. Maybe it's just not possible, but I honestly got so fed up with it that it's the last thing I want to go near again. Aside from that, the last thing road related are 2 intersections that I set up. The first one comes off of the secondary interchange on the 431. I removed the roundabout and set up a timed light instead because I didn't want to go through the hassle of connecting CSUR roads to vanilla roads, and because the roundabout here always annoyed me. There's also a really nice intersection in Fawn Yards, also using a timed traffic light. It was just really fun to decal it out, and I think it came out pretty well. It's all organized and you can see where every lane goes. That's about it for the road side of things. The problem with big projects like Grünstadt is that my ideas, my workflow, and my style all change over the course of it, so I go back in to change things, but then every time I load back in and I don't have a solid plan, I end up wandering around and looking at all the things I dislike, and you end up falling into the cycle where you want to change something, so you do, but then by the time that's done you want to do something else, and that's something I really struggle with. Since we last checked into the city last episode, there have been a lot of changes and a few really notable ones. A few of you might have seen my 2 videos that are up on the official City Skylines channel. The 2 things that I did, which were nuclear energy and water processes, were actually both done in Grünstadt. For the nuclear power plant, I did a practice build when I was researching everything to get my things right. I actually liked the one I made for the video a little bit better. I put more work into it and I made it very detailed so it would look very impressive. So I wouldn't mind switching them out with the one I have now, but whatever. It still uses the dual pack, but I went all out on the canals and the detail. I'll have the video linked to that below since I go over it way more thoroughly there. My favorite part on it is probably the docks I have set up. The breakwaters are easy to piece together and they just work well. Simple things like that you can easily change just really get my attention. After that, there's all the water management facilities I built, which are the exact same ones in the video, which again I'll link. The wastewater facility just straight up replaces the port I had here. It was honestly just kind of useless, and as with a lot of things, including the weird casino / leisure district right next to it, it's a nuisance, an eyesore, and it doesn't fit. The water intake or purification plant is in Blightville along the river and pumps that out to the map, and I have a bunch of small pumping stations scattered around. Something else I started doing was rebuilding some of Woodside. When I made the suburbs video, I was still very much using zoned growables, but what I've really moved to is using ploppable Rico because of how much more control I have over the buildings I place. People often try to replicate what they see in real life, and urban-suburban sprawl is a very real thing. That was the point of that video, but personally, sprawl really bothers me. So what I started doing was increasing the density and really improving walk and bikeability. The neighborhoods are looking a lot nicer and they just feel more cozy. I still have some low density houses, but especially for locations still close to the city core, it doesn't make sense to have too much of them. Blightville is getting a little bit of a makeover too. I realized how lazy a lot of my fields were and I didn't like the road layout all too much. I think the rivers came out nicer too. Aside from that, there were a couple smaller projects in the city that were mostly about filling in empty space or detailing areas that should be detailed. There's this one school I spent a little bit of time on, getting it to look all nice, and a small community where I had the bus station a really long time ago with Vlad's new gymnasium building. That one was really great to work with because the simple flat surfaces on the building let me make areas like the roof grass patio or spice up the detail with Ronix's roof networks. You can see what I meant with falling into a cycle of redoing things. It's not anything new, and I've gone through it dozens of times now. I look at the city and I think, oh, there's more metro tracks now, I should redo the metro, or this or that. It's hard to fight that off. Grünstadt is a big city, but there's always something to do, and I guess we'll keep working on it. Thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you next time.